बिहारी जू की जाय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मरण मोहन जू की जाय। नित्य लीला प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोस्वामी महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नित्य लीला प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नित्य लीला प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गोकिशोर बाबाजी महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबाजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपानुगौरिया गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम अक्षय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री वासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौरमंडल ब्रजमंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्री उद्धव-गीता की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्री श्रीमद् भक्ति वेदांत नारायणीति नामिने। नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। गुरवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतं। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Śrīvāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everybody. Ganga Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Madhavi Didi, Pranams, Kishore Prabhu, Sudevi Didi, and Gargaraj Ji. Dandavat Pranams to all of you. Hare Krishna. Alright, so we are continuing on with our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter... What chapter is it in Srimad Bhagavatam? It is chapter 27. Haribo, Rup Manjari Didi, and Nitai. Oh, just you today. Okay. Haribo. Alright. So, we are beginning chapter 21. Let's see. Oops, I forgot to open this up. One second. Alright, so Lord Krishna's instructions on the process of deity worship. But let's recap what we read the previous day. One second, let me just open this up. Okay, I'm just going to read these from the previous two chapters. Uddhava asked, "How do materialistic people accept various bodies?" Krishna replied, "The mind shaped by the reactions of fruit of actions, reactions of fruit of actions goes from one body to another, and the soul follows the mind. This is the mechanism between reincarnation. Death is the forgetfulness of one's identity with old bodies to get absorbed in the pleasures and pains of a subsequent new body. Birth is a person's total identification with a new body. A materially conditioned soul accepts a new body as real, similar to how while sleeping one accepts a dream as reality. For one thus spiritually asleep and meditating on sense gratification, the cycle of repeated birth and death continues." Now, the next chapter. "One who desires the highest goal in life should use one's intelligence to keep oneself safe on the spiritual platform, even in difficult situations like being neglected, insulted, ridiculed, envied, or agitated by ignorant people." Krishna then described the story of the tolerant Avanti Brahman who soberly met with the insults of people. Considering all insults to be the results of his own past deeds, he took shelter of the Lord. In the maturity of his realization, he sang a song called the Bhaktisiddhānta, which inspires detachment and devotion. Oh, it doesn't get into the Bhaktisiddhānta though at all. Anyhow, that was a very quick summary, but we have a lot to get through today, so I'm just going to continue on. Oh, you've been waiting for this chapter. Cool. I'm not at all familiar with it, so that's great. Okay. Chapter 21, Lord Krishna's instructions on the process of deity worship. Chapter summary, Kathasar, which Shiva said was written by Śrīla Bhakti Pramod Puri Gosvāmī Maharaj. In this chapter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead explains the process of deity worship. Worshipping the deity form of the Supreme Lord purifies the mind and awards one satisfaction. Indeed, it is the source of all desirable gains. One who does not engage himself in worshipping the deity will certainly remain attracted to material sense gratification, and he will have no scope for giving up bad association. In the Sattva scriptures, the Supreme Lord has given instructions on the process of worshipping him as the deity. Brahma, Shiva, Narad, Vyas, and all other sages have recommended this process as being most beneficial for the members of all varnas and ashrams, including women and sudras. There are 3 varieties of archan, or deity worship, based on either the original Vedas, the secondary tantras, or a combination of these. The deity form, the ground, fire, the sun, water, and the heart of the worshipper are all places where the deity can be present. The deity that is to be worshipped may be made of any one of the 8 substances: stone, wood, metal, clay, paint, sand, that means drawn upon the ground, the mind, or jewels. These categories are further subdivided into 2, temporary and permanent. The details of the worshipping process are as follows. The devotee should bathe, both physically and by chanting mantras, and then utter the Gayatri mantra at the prescribed junctures of the day. He should arrange a seat facing either east or north, or else directly facing the deity, and should bathe the deity. He should then decorate the deity with clothing and ornaments, sprinkle water on the vessels and other paraphernalia to be used for the worship, and offer water for bathing the deity's lotus feet, arghya, water for washing his mouth, fragrant oils, incense, lamps, flowers, and food preparations. After this, one should worship the Lord's personal servants and bodyguards, his consort, his energies, and the spiritual masters by chanting the respective Mool mantras. The worshipper should recite prayers from the Puranas and other scriptures, offer obeisances by falling flat on the ground, beg for the Lord's benediction, and accept the remnants of the Lord's flower garlands. Included in this method of deity worship are the proper installation of the deity and the construction of a temple, and also the conducting of processions and other festivals. By worshipping Lord Sri Hari with unconditional devotion in this manner, one is sure to advance toward pure loving service to his lotus feet. But if one steals things that have been given for the service of the deity or the brahmanas, whether given by himself or by others, he will have to take his next birth as a stool-eating worm. Actually, there's lots of stories of pujaris stealing stuff from the mat and then taking off. Actually, lots of pujaris steal stuff. Anyhow, I was just hearing from a friend of mine of all the stories of pujaris stealing things. Okay. Shri Uddhava Uvacha. Haribo Champak Didi. Shri Uddhava Uvacha. Kriya Yogam Samachakshva Bhavad Aradhanam Prabho Yasmat Tvam Ye Yatarchanti Sattvatar Shabha. Shri Uddhav said, O Lord, please describe the procedures for worshipping you in your form as the deity in the temple. What qualifications must a devotee possess to worship you in this way? And what are the rules and regulations to be observed? Sārārtha-darśinī, commentary by Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. In this chapter, Lord Sri Krishna gives instructions to Uddhava about the principles of deity worship, its ingredients, the various deity forms, and the rules and regulations that are to be observed by the worshippers. The Lord had previously said, "It is very rare to find one who is attached to his wife and children that is trying to cultivate devotional service and association of saintly persons." With this in mind, Uddhava inquired about deity worship as prescribed in the Vedic literature. It is very rare to find one who is attached to his wife and children that is trying to cultivate devotional service and the association of saintly persons. So I guess he's asking about deity worship because he's thinking that most householders, because they don't get association with saintly persons so often, right? Etad vadanti munayo muhur nishayasyam drinam. Oh, what? Etad vadanti munayo muhur nishrayasam drinam Narado Bhagavan Vyasa Acharyong Girasa Sutta. All the great sages, such as Narad Muni, Vyasadeva, and Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the demigods, they have all declared that such worship is supremely beneficial for all members of human society. Nisritam te mukambojad yadaha bhagavanaja putrebhyo bhrigumukhebhyo devyai cha bhagavan bhava etarvai sarvavarnanam ashramanam cha sammatam Shreyasam uttamang manye stri shudranam cha manada. O most magnanimous Lord, you first gave instructions on the process of deity worship to Lord Brahma. Then they were passed on by him to his sons, headed by Bhrigu, and Lord Shiva instructed his wife Parvati. Therefore, I consider that worship of you in your form as a deity is the best spiritual practice for the members of all the varnas and ashrams, even for women and shudras. Sārārtha-darśinī. The glories of worshipping the deity form of the Supreme Lord is herein being described. Etat kamalapatraksha karma bandha vimochanam bhaktaya chanuraktaya brohi Vishveshwareshwara. O lotus-eyed one, O Lord of the demigods, please explain to me, your surrendered servant, this process by which one can be delivered from the bondage of material existence. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Lord might question Uddhava, you are my surrendered devotee and are attached to me in love, and so what is the need for your knowing about deity worship? Uddhava might answer, I am concerned for the welfare of all living entities. Therefore, kindly reveal the glories of this process to your surrendered servant. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda. When one engages in the service of the Lord, renouncing all sense of false proprietorship, if one acts without desiring to enjoy the fruits of his work, he is to be considered a pure devotee. However, as long as one remains within this world, embodied by gross and subtle coverings, one's nature, born of the interactions of the three modes of material nature, remains prominent. In the material condition of life, which is temporary, full of ignorance, and thoroughly miserable, one considers himself to be the doer of all activities, being bound by his false ego. Only by receiving instructions from a pure devotee of the Lord can one give up the materialistic conception of life. When, under the instruction of the spiritual master, one dovetails his designated existence in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is one without a second, the false conception of being an enjoyer of nature gradually diminishes. In order to gain relief from the materialistic conception of life, which consists of the knower of matter, material knowledge, and the object of material knowledge, one must engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. When non-devotees who are fully absorbed in the mundane conception of life become inclined toward the service of the Supreme Lord and his devotees, then, as they surrender unto the Supreme Lord and his dear devotees, they can realize the transcendental nature of devotional service. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Na hyanto nantaparasya karma khandasya chodhava sankshiptam varnayishyami yathavar anupurvasha. The Supreme Lord said, My dear Uddhava, the procedures prescribed in the Karma Kanda sections of the Vedic literature are innumerable, and so I shall explain the subject to you briefly from the beginning. Sārārtha-darśinī. There are innumerable Vedic methods of worship, or archan, prescribed in the Karmakanda section of the Vedas. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. All religious, ritualistic activities and worldly activities that are performed with the aim of attaining material enjoyment or dry renunciation must be considered as perishable activities. In this material world, there are countless methods employed for sense gratification and renunciation. Similarly, in the spiritual world of Vaikuntha, there are an unlimited variety of pastimes of the Supreme Godhead. There are innumerable prescriptions given in the Karmakanda sections of the Vedas dealing with enjoyment, material enjoyment, and renunciation. Vaidikas tantriko mishra iti me trividho makha trayanam ipsite naiva vedhina mam samarcharet. There are three methods for worshipping me. There are the Vedic methods, the Tantric methods, and mixed. One should select the method that is suited for him and then worship me according to the prescribed rules and regulations. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Vedic method for worshipping the Supreme Lord is by chanting the prescribed mantras. The Tantrika method of worshipping the Supreme Lord is by reciting the mantras such as the 18-syllable mantra that are given in literature such as the Gautamiya Tantra. Utilization of both literatures is the mixed way of worshipping the Supreme Lord. One should choose the method that is suitable for one's condition of life. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. There are three methods of performing sacrifice. Materialistic people are generally unwilling to perform sacrifice because of their duplicitous nature and their strong desire to enjoy material happiness. Sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is performed according to the Vedic injunctions, are those prescribed in the Pancharatra. The Vedic, Pancharatric, and a combination of both are the three methods to properly worship the Supreme Lord. Yada svanigame nuktam dvijatvam prapya purushaha yatha yajetamam bhaktya shraddhayatan nibodhame. Now please listen faithfully as I explain to you how one who has become twice born by observing the relevant Vedic prescriptions should worship me with devotion. Sārārtha-darśinī. There are particular Vedic injunctions relevant to one's social and occupational status. Members of the Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya communities achieve the status of twice born by initiation into the Gayatri Mantra. In this chapter, the Supreme Lord explains how such a person should worship him with faith and devotion. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Vedic scriptures are divided into two categories, Ekayan and Bhavayan. One must receive initiation into the practices of one of these two categories, and then faithfully worship the Supreme Lord, which culminates in achievement of life's ultimate goal, the attainment of love for God. The process of worship that are performed when one is still in the bodily conception of life, considering himself to be the enjoyer of this material world, is called archan. Without being twice born by undergoing the purificatory rituals, it is not possible to worship the Supreme Lord properly. When one makes such an attempt, the result is that he either remains a sense enjoyer or becomes a dry renunciate after giving up such worship. Those who observe the Vedic purificatory processes, or the Pancharatric purificatory processes, undergo second birth in the Ekayan category. One cannot become twice born if he is blinded by intense desires for material enjoyment. Therefore, it is essential for one to undergo second birth by following the prescribed rules and regulations of the Vedic literature. There are 3 types of birth. There's Shokra, or seminal, Savitra, or becoming twice born, and Diksha, or spiritual initiation. The material body, which is produced by the combined effort of the father and mother, can be satisfied by undergoing the appropriate purificatory rituals. In this way, one becomes eligible to rise to the platform of transcendental bliss. False ego, which checks the flow of transcendental happiness and which is born of ignorance, is indicative of a seminal birth. Devotional service is awakened within the heart only after one takes initiation from a bona fide spiritual master. The object of worship, pure devotional service, and unalloyed devotees. So that's Bhagavan, Bhakti, and the Bhakta. These 3 exist eternally in a state of full knowledge and bliss, and such a condition becomes manifest when one develops firm faith in the instructions of the spiritual master. It is at this point that one can begin the process of worship as described in this chapter. The Vedic samskars are considered complete when one undergoes the Pancharatric samskars. Otherwise, simply by performing the rituals of the Karmakanda sections of the Vedas, one cannot rise above the influence of the 3 modes of material nature. Hari Bol, Manjari Didi. Okay. Oh, and Hari Krishna, Raseshwari Mataji, and Prajumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji. Hari Krishna. Cool. Acharyam Standilegnova Surye Vapsuridi Dvija Dravyena Bhakti Yuktorchet Swaguru Mam Amayaya. A twice-born person should sincerely worship me, his worshipable Lord, by offering appropriate paraphernalia and loving devotion to my deity form, or to my form appearing upon the ground, in fire, in the sun, in water, or within his heart. Sārārtha-darśinī. The word Archa refers to the deity of the Supreme Lord. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. When the eternal soul misuses his minute independence, he is placed within the material nature and accepts temporary material bodies, one after another. The Absolute Truth possesses 2 principles, Apara Prakriti and Para Prakriti. The Apara Prakriti manifests the visible universe with 5 gross material elements. The 3 modes of material nature engage the living entities and activities of the gross and subtle bodies by covering their knowledge, keep them far from the para side. So these 3 modes of material nature keep them far from the para prakriti. Without understanding of the characteristics of the Lord's superior nature, the conditioned souls reside in the material world as sense enjoyers, or are false renunciates. It is only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord or his pure devotees that a conditioned soul can understand how he is being manipulated by the 3 material modes. And he understands that only the Supreme Lord has the ability to liberate him from the clutches of material nature. With such an understanding, one realizes the complete futility of trying to become liberated from the insurmountable material energy by relying upon one's limited senses and polluted mind. The spiritual master also belongs to the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, but he is empowered to deliver the conditioned souls by engaging them in devotional service. The spiritual master is the incarnation of the Lord's mercy, and as such, he is considered to be the external manifestation of the Supersoul. By his instructions and personal examples, He inspires the conditioned souls to renounce their foolish endeavors of lording it over the material energy of the Supreme Lord, which only awards them varieties of miserable conditions. The spiritual master engages his disciple in the worship of the deity of the Lord, because it is the practical way to employ their mind and senses in devotional service. The word archa refers to the incarnation of the Supreme Lord's mercy. It is one of the 5 eternal manifestations. It is one of the 5 eternal manifestations of the Lord that is comprehensible for the conditioned souls. Those who are neophytes in devotional service, who still cling to the bodily concept of life, can easily be purified when they are engaged in the worship of the deity in the temple. A particular place that has been purified by the chanting of mantras is called Standila. One second. Fire, the sun, water, and the heart of the living entity are also places for worshipping the Supreme Lord. Although Lord Vishnu is one, he is present in different forms. He appears as the deity and becomes the worshipable Lord for neophyte devotees. Neophyte devotees are recommended to become attached to deity worship. By serving the Supreme Lord in this manner, they utilize all kinds of paraphernalia for his service, rather than considering such things to be material and thus meant for their enjoyment. Gradually, while engaging in the worship of the deity under the direction of the spiritual master, a neophyte devotee will be elevated to the platform of Madhyam Adhikari. At this time, the devotee becomes more concerned with reviving his transcendental ras instead of cultivating the 5 kinds of mundane ras, knowing the Supreme Lord to be the Supreme Lord to be the reservoir of all ras. At this level of advancement, one is fit to understand the purport of this verse from the Padma Purana. Yena janma shatai purvam vasudeva samarchita tan mukhe harinamani sada tishtanti bharata. O descendant of Bharata, the holy names of Lord Vishnu are always vibrating on the tongue of one who has previously worshipped Lord Vasudeva with faith and devotion for hundreds of lifetimes. One who is advanced in devotional service does not consider the Lord to be an order supplier. Such a second-class devotee offers his love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That devotee is a sincere friend to all the devotees of the Lord. He shows mercy to ignorant people who are innocent and disregards those who are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the definition that we read in, I forgot which chapter it was, but it was somewhere in the beginning of the 11th canto. Ishvare tadadineshu balisheshu dishachucha prema maitri kripopeksha yah karoti samadhyama. As the devotee makes advancement in devotional service, he can come to realize that the mantras he is chanting are not like the mundane vibrations of this material world. When his absorption in devotional service becomes complete, so that there no longer remains any scope for his engagement in sense gratification, the devotee comes to the platform of first-class devotional service as a Mahabhagavat. Becoming thus liberated from the clutches of the Lord's external energy, the devotee realizes his original constitutional relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is paramount to seeing the Lord face to face. The spiritual master is on the same platform as the Supreme Lord, who is the maintainer of the universes and the destroyer of the conditioned soul's false pride. Let me reread that. The spiritual master is on the same platform as the Supreme Lord, who is the maintainer of the universe and the destroyer of the conditioned soul's false spirit of enjoyment. Being one in interest with the Lord, the spiritual master is known as the dearest servant of the Lord. Enviousness will surely arise within the heart of a person who considers the spiritual master to be a mortal human being. If such a misconception is not indulged in, however, by the mercy of the Lord, one will perceive how the spiritual master is none different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shakshadharitvena samasta shastre. Purvam, one second, just checking the comments. Okay. Purvam snanam prakurvita dhota dantong gashuddhaye ubhayar apicha snanam mantrar mrid grahanadina. First, one should clean his teeth and bathe. Then a second cleansing of the body should be performed by smearing it with earth and chanting mantras from both the Vedas and Tantras. Sārārtha-darśinī. One can also bathe by chanting Vedic and Tantric mantras. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. By the recitation of prescribed mantras, the contamination of considering oneself to be the enjoyer of nature can also be purified. Sandhyopastyadi karmani vedena choditani me pujam tai kalpayet samyak sankalpa karma pavanim. Concentrating the mind on me, one should worship me by the performance of his prescribed duties, such as chanting the Gayatri Mantra 3 times a day. Such performances are enjoined by the Vedas, and they purify the worshipper of all reactions of karma. Sārārtha-darśinī. One should engage in the worship of the Supreme Lord by following the rules and regulations enjoined by the scriptures. This will purify one's existence and free one from the bondage of fruitive activities. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. After completing one's prescribed duties, such as chanting of mantras, which are enjoined by the Vedas, one should engage in the worship of the Supreme Lord. As soon as one abandons the materialistic propensity for sense enjoyment by strengthening his resolve to worship Lord Hari, one becomes freed from the bondage of karma. These are all the different forms that the deity can be made of. Shaili daru mayi lohi lepya lekya chasaikati mano mayi mani mayi pratimashta vidha smrita. The deity form of the Lord appears in 8 varieties: stone, wood, metal, earth, paint, sand, the mind, and jewels. This is the verdict of the scriptures. Sārārtha-darśinī. The different kinds of deities are being described in this verse. The word Shaili means a deity made of stone. The word Lohi means a deity made of metal, such as no plastic. Actual worship of the Supreme Lord begins when one gives up all attempts at mental speculation on the strength of the transcendental instructions received from the spiritual master. And thus one renounces the materialistic conception that the Supreme Lord is the object of one's enjoyment. For the benefit of such a devotee, the Lord appears in 8 varieties of forms. The Supreme Lord is always prepared to fulfill the desires of his devotees, as long as they will not cause them to fall into a miserable condition of life. It is only for the benefit of neophyte devotees that the Lord appears in these 8 forms. However, one should never make the mistake of considering the deity of the Lord to be made of material elements, such as marble or brass. Such a mentality is certainly suitable for placing one on the path to hell. I need to sit up, sorry guys. Yeah, so if you consider the deity to be made of material elements, then you are put on the path to hell. Unless one receives an initiation from a spiritual master coming in disciplic succession, it is not possible to understand the transcendental nature of Lord Vasudeva, and for that reason, the 8 kinds of deities may appear mundane to the imperfect senses of the conditioned soul. Such a misunderstanding is indicative of the ignorance that is caused by the controlling power of Maya. Chalachaleti dvividha pratishta jiva mandiram udvasavahane nastha stairayam uddhavarchane. My dear Uddhav, the deity form of the Lord, who is the shelter of all living entities, can be established in two ways, movable or immovable. A permanent deity, having been installed, can never be sent away or immersed in a body of water. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Supreme Lord is directly present as the deity. He is also present within the temple of the living entity's heart. Indeed, he is the shelter of all living entities. An example of his stationary form is Lord Jagannath in Puri, and an example of his moving form is Child Krishna. Materialistic persons of whatever stripe consider the Lord to be their order supplier, and so they make temporary arrangements for religious ceremonies to achieve temporary material sense gratification. This temporary mode of worship is favored by those desiring to exploit the personality of Godhead for their personal ends, whereas the loving devotees in Krishna consciousness eternally engage in the worship of the personality of Godhead. They install permanent deities meant to be worshipped perpetually. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The devotees of the Lord install the deity form of the worshipable Lord in two different ways, temporary and permanent. However, there is no procedure for inviting and then immersing the permanent form of the Supreme Lord. These deities are permanently installed and their worship goes on perpetually. Invoking and then immersing the deity is the practice of materialists who want to exploit the Supreme Lord for the fulfillment of their personal ambitions. The impersonalists regard the eternal form of the Lord as a temporary manifestation created by the illusory energy, Maya. In fact, they regard the deity as a mere stepping stone in their ambitious endeavor to attain God. To become God. Astirayam vikalpasyat standiletur bhavedvayam snapanam tvavilepyanam anyatra parimarjanam. The deity that is temporarily established can be invited and sent away, but these two rituals should be always performed when the deity is traced upon the ground. The deity should be bathed with water, except if the deity is made of clay, paint, or wood, in which cases a thorough cleansing without water is enjoined. Sārārtha-darśinī. One may invoke and then immerse a deity made of sand from a riverbank, or painted as desired. However, the Shalagram Shila should never be immersed. Okay. It's good to know. The Shalagram Shila should never be immersed. But that's what they do every day. When they bathe the deity, they don't. Oops, did I copy that? I meant to. One second. Sorry, I didn't mean to copy that. I meant to highlight that. Invocation and immersion is recommended for deities made of earth or clay, as well as sand. Except for paintings of the Lord and deities made of clay or sandalwood, all the other deities should be bathed with water. The deities of clay or wood should be carefully cleansed without the use of water. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. There is no need for one to waste so many ingredients for worship if he considers the deity of Lord Vishnu to be made of stone. The deities that are painted or made from clay should not be bathed with water. Wiping with a dry cloth to remove the dust is sufficient. Yes, and very important verse, Kishore. Dravyaya prasiddharmadhyaga pratimadishvamayena bhaktasya cha yatha labdhair hridhi bhavena chaivahi. One should worship me in my deity form by offering the most excellent paraphernalia. But an unalloyed devotee who is free from material desires can worship me with whatever is easily obtainable, or even within his mind. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. No, Sārārtha-darśinī. If one has an abundance of wealth, he should worship the deity with he should worship the deity with offerings of the most excellent ingredients, such as sugar candy, ghee, sandalwood paste, kumkum, and so forth. However, an impoverished devotee can worship the deity with whatever he may have in his possession, offering it with love and devotion. He may even offer sweet rice or fried rice within his mind, if he has nothing suitable to offer the Lord. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. A neophyte, or materialistic devotee, who is filled with material desires, simply dreams of gaining the opportunity of gratifying his senses. Such a devotee may simply think of the Lord as his benefactor, without understanding his actual position as eternal servitor of the Lord. On the other hand, an advanced devotee knows that the deity is identical to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so all the ingredients for worship that he offers are actually properly utilized. The internal mood of a devotee is the principal ingredient of his worship. Snānalankaranam prishtam archayam eva tuddhava standile tattva vinyaso vahnavajya plutam havi surye chabhyarhanam prishtam salile saliladivi shraddhayoparidam prishtam bhaktena mamavaryapi. My dear Uddhav, while worshipping the deity, bathing and decorating with beautiful clothes, ornaments, and flowers are the most pleasing While worshipping the deity, bathing and decorating with beautiful clothes, ornaments, and flowers are the most pleasing offerings. When the deity is drawn on a sanctified surface, the offering of tattva vinyasa is most important. Oblations of sesame seeds and barley soaked in ghee are the best oblations poured into the sacrificial fire. Worship consisting of upasthana and arghya is the best worship of the sun. One should worship me in the form of water by offerings of water. Whatever my devotee offers to me, even if it is just a little water, is most dear to me. So merciful, huh? Sārārtha-darśinī. The Lord should be invoked and established on sanctified grounds by the chanting of mantras. One should worship the Lord in fire by offerings of sesame seeds and barley mixed in ghee poured into the sacrificial fire. One should worship the Lord in the sun by offering arghya. To worship the form of the Lord in water, one should simply offer water. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. A neophyte devotee should offer opulent paraphernalia to the deity so that he may constantly remember that the Supreme Lord is the supreme enjoyer and that he, the neophyte, is meant for the deity's pleasure. An advanced devotee can worship the Lord with whatever he has in his possession, offered with love and devotion. One who makes a show of great pomp while performing ritualistic worship, but displays miserliness when collecting the ingredients of worship, diminishes his propensity for the service of the Lord. Bathing the deity on a mirror, decorating the deity with ornaments, performing appropriate rituals on the ground, offering oblations into the sacrificial fire, offering arghya to the sun, and worshipping the Purush incarnation who lies in the water are herein recommended. Whatever a devotee offers to the deity with faith and devotion satisfies the Supreme Lord, whereas even abundance of wealth offered without faith by non-devotees fails to attract the attention of the Lord. Bhuryapya bhaktopahritam nameto shaya kalpate kandho dhupa samanaso depo nadyam chakim puna. I do not accept even the most opulent offerings if they are given by non-devotees, but I am very pleased to accept even the most insignificant thing offered with love by the hand of my devotee. I am certainly most pleased when nice fragrant oil, incense, flowers, and palatable foods are offered to me with love. Sārārtha-darśinī. The word sumanaso refers to the flower known as sumanasa. Shuchi sambrita sambhara pragdarbhaya kalpitasana asina pragudagvarched archayam tvata sammukha. After purifying himself and collecting all the paraphernalia for worship, one should sit down on a mat of kusha grass, facing either east or north. If the deity is permanently installed, the worshipper should sit facing the deity. Sārārtha-darśinī. Now, the beginning of the process of deity worship is being described. One should first purify himself and then sit down facing either east or north. However, one who worships an immovable deity should sit directly in front of the deity. Kritanyasa kritanyasam mararcham parinamrijet kalasham prokshaniyam cha yathavar upasadhayet. Thereafter, the devotee should perform the ritual known as nyas, the process of purifying oneself by touching the various parts of the body while chanting mantras. So he should perform a ritual known as nyas on his own body, and on that of the deity he should perform nyas also. He should then take from the deity the remnants of previous offerings, such as flowers and flower garlands. He should then prepare a pitcher of water for cleansing the deity. Sārārtha-darśinī. Before beginning one's worship of the deity, one should take permission from the spiritual master by offering him obeisances. Then, according to his instructions, one should perform anga nyas on his own body, performing nyas on the body of the deity while chanting the Mūla mantras, and cleanse the altar and the deity by removing the previously offered flowers and so on. One should keep a pot of water for sprinkling, and one should then decorate the deity with flowers and so forth. Tadadbhir devayajanam dravanyatmanamevacha proksha patrani trinyadvis taister dravyaischasadayet. He should then sprinkle the water of that vessel on the place of worship, the paraphernalia for worship, and his own body. Next, he should decorate 3 pitchers of water with sandalwood paste and flowers, which will be used for offering padya to the deity. Interesting. Sārārtha-darśinī. Next, one should sprinkle the purified water on the place of worship and the ingredients for worship. So you should sprinkle purified water on the place of worship and the ingredients for worship. In the container of padya, one should place water, black durva grass, lotus petals, and an aparijata flower. In the container of arghya, there should be 8 items. That's sandalwood paste, flowers, atapa, rice, barley, tips of kusha grass, sesame seeds, mustard seeds, and durvasha grass. In the container of achmaniya, there should be 3 items. That's nutmeg, clove, and cocola. Padyargyarchamaniyar. Oh my God, that's one sentence, that full line. Padyargyarchamaniyartham Trini patrani deshika Hridashishnatta shikaya Gayatriya chabimantrayet. Next, the worshipper should purify the 3 vessels. He should sanctify the vessel holding water for Padya, the water for washing the Lord's feet, by chanting Hridaya Namaha. The vessel containing water for Arghya by chanting Shirase Namah Swaha, and the vessel containing water for Achmaniya, washing the Lord's mouth, by chanting Shikayai Vashat. The Gayatri mantra should also be chanted for all 3 vessels. Sārārtha-darśinī. The worshipper should purify the 3 containers by chanting the Hridaya mantra and so on, as well as the Gayatri mantra. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. After chanting the Gayatri mantra, the worshipper should the worshipper should purify the container of Padya by chanting Hridaya Namaha. The container of Arghya, he should purify the container of Arghya by chanting Shirase Swaha, and he should and the container of Achamaniya by chanting Shikayai Vashat. One should purify the ingredients for Padya, Arghya, and Achamaniya by sprinkling water on them while remembering the Supreme Lord. The ingredients of Arghya are water, milk, tips of kusha grass, yogurt, ghee, atapa rice, and barley, or simply barley, water, and yogurt, as prescribed by the followers of the Samaveda. Brahmanas who follow the Samaveda use the word Argyam with a ya in the neuter gender. But the followers of the other Vedas use the word Arghya without the ya and in the masculine gender. Okay, I'm going to end here for now because it's 8:30. We read up to verse 23. Kishore is asking, what is Coca-Cola? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandhar Vikagiri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki jai, Nitya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupada Shritarishita Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosvāmī Maharaj Shri Guru Dev ki jai, Nitya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupada Shritarishita Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Vaman Gosvāmī Maharaj ki jai, Nitya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupada Shritarishita Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupāda ki jai, Nitya Pravishtam Vishnupada Shritarishita Shishmar Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosvāmī Maharaj ki jai, Nitya Pravishtam Vishnupada Shritarishita Shishmar Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda ki jai, Nitya Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Śrīla Gorksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai, Nitya Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Ṭhākura ki jai, Nitya Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai, Shri Rupa Anugagoriya Guru Varga ki jai, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhattadash Raghunath Sārātha Gosvāmī Prabhu ki jai, Shri Sarup Damadai Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Ṭhākura ki jai, Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai, Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Uddhava-gīta ki jai. Sorry. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Vai Priyai Keshavashacha, Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyayivacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sorry for falling asleep again, guys. I don't know why that keeps on happening. I just looked up Coca-Cola. It says, Coca-Cola refers to a particular item used to beautify the sleeping chamber of young ladies in ancient India. That's, what is it? Okay, here at shaligram.net, the upachara items, Coca-Cola berry scent. I guess it's a kind of berry then? I guess. Yeah. Actually, you know, it's a really good website is wisdomlib.org. Let's see what wisdomlib.org has. Coca-Cola. Here. Let's see what wisdomlib says. Okay, here. Coca-Cola refers to a kind of plant, the berry of which has a waxy and aromatic interior. Okay, so yeah, it's that kind of berry. Anyways, Sanskrit dictionary. A perfume, a plant bearing a berry, the inner part of which, okay. Possibly the fruit of the Coccolus indicus. What's that? Let's see a picture. Let's see what this is. Images. There's Coccolus indicus. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you all tomorrow. Oh, wait. Pradyumna is asking a question. My Param Gurudev says that not to use mudras. Yeah, we don't generally use mudras except for, like, there are a couple. There's this one, the Ankush Mudra, right? This one. Looks like I'm flicking somebody off. And then there's, what are another mudras that we use? Anyways, there are a couple mudras that we use, but it's only like two that I can think of. Yeah. In ISKCON, I think they use lots of stuff from, yeah, you know all about that. You've been studying that for a while. Yeah. From the... All right, everybody. See you all tomorrow. Jai Shri Radhe. Thank you so much for joining. Hare Krishna. And we only have 5 more days of reading left. And then we finish Uddhava-gīta. Gita. It's a long A.